The views and opinions expressed by the following program are those of the host, guests, and callers and are not necessarily those of this station or Webster Rock Hill Ministries, its management, or other hosts or underwriting sponsors. Programs presented by KWRH-LP are for educational and entertainment purposes only.
In Tune's a 2-hour weekly broadcast which focuses and reflects on issues that impact and connects our community in the greater St. Louis area. Our topics include the arts, crime, education, employment, faith, finance, food, history, housing, humor, and justice. Hey, we've got Carrie Houck, who's the executive artistic director of the Tennessee Williams Festival St. Louis. And I kind of gave it away. I should have said, Ellie, today we're going to talk about Thomas Lanier Williams.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and no one would have known who that was.
Right, alias, a.k.a.
Tennessee Williams.
Tennessee Williams. And Carrie, welcome to In Tune
Good to
today.
See you.
I'm going to read Carrie's bio here because it's really great. She spent her professional life as an actor, casting director, producer, teaching artist, educated at HB Studio in New York City, Conservatory Theater of Arts at Webster University.
Wow.
Began her acting career at the Repertory Theater of St. Louis. From there, worked in New York City, LA, and Chicago, cast over 30 films, numerous television shows, countless national commercials, and has worked with director Steven Soderbergh, Robert Altman, Alexander Payne, Howard Franklin, among others. Started her casting career in Chicago 35 years ago. From there, settled back to St. Louis to raise her daughter, produced 2 films, and the critically acclaimed production of Tennessee Williams' Stairs to the Roof, directed by Fred, is it Abrams?
It's Abramsa.
Abramsa?
He's from Cape Town, South Africa.
And she's an adjunct professor of casting and acting at Webster University and has taught at WashU and Columbia College in Chicago.
Wow. Can I just touch you?
Did I do that?
Yeah,
Did I do all that?
Just reach out and touch you. My gosh.
Can I retire now?
You know, I have a curious question. Where did it all begin? Did you perform in high school? Or?
No. I'll tell you what, I was born that way. And I think most people who have longevity in the business don't have a choice. I'm lucky I got to do it. When I was a kid, we didn't have Coca. You know, it was a long time ago, Arnold.
Yeah.
I had ballet lessons, and I loved that, but I wanted to act, and there weren't opportunities for kids then. There was a woman, I think she was on Del Mar. She was in U City, and she had a little acting school with a little stage. I wish I could remember where it was. And I went there a couple of times, but it wasn't like kids now who have these weekly programs and these marvelous opportunities.
Right.
And I couldn't really sing, so I never went for the Muni Kid Chorus thing. So I would put on plays in my carport in Crestwood on Coffee Court, which isn't too far from here, and have the neighbors come over. And they'd be fully produced. We'd do Shakespeare, we'd do Tennessee Williams. I loved reading plays when I was a kid. I read plays, not novels. I wasn't reading Nancy Drew.
Wow.
I was reading Streetcar Named Desire, The Taming of the Shrew. I was weird.
That's the other question I had. I have a whole list of things, but why Tennessee Williams? And maybe that's because you grew up reading him?
I did grow up reading him. My uncles knew him, but not from here. They knew him from other times in their lives. My Aunt Zoe had a bar in Tangier, Morocco.
Wow.
And they befriended Tennessee there. It was frequented by a lot of famous writers, Ernest Hemingway, Paul Bowles, William S. Burroughs. So it was a mecca for writers in the 50s. So they knew Tennessee, and my other uncle Norman knew him from elsewhere. I don't know where, but I loved his writing. I connected with it as a child, which is pretty odd. But Tennessee, you know, number one, his writing is like poetry. It's very lyrical. It's very beautiful just to listen to. He understands connecting to human beings. He understands loneliness. I wasn't really popular. I was as a kid, but then in high school I really wasn't. So he writes about the other, you know, people who really don't have a group or feel a part of. Yeah, so,
wow.
Yeah.
And then college was just like...
I was lucky that I got to go to that we had Webster Conservatory back then because, again, in my era... kids didn't get to apply to 20 different schools.
Right.
You know, we got to choose one and hope that we got in. And I did get in, and the conservatory was in full swing. It was about 5 or 6 years old by then. And we had a company at the Rep who were our professors. They were a true troupe. I mean, they were the company. And they would have visiting artists who also would lecture and whatnot. But it was, I learned a lot. And it was the first time I got to perform because I didn't ever get cast in high school because I wasn't a cheerleader. And that's how it worked at Lindbergh then.
Wow.
It doesn't anymore.
No,
but
it doesn't.
Did then.
And you know what? I went to Webster High. And so being right across the street from Webster University, and I was a thespian, and we were always casting. And so with Little Theater, Mrs. Smizer, and she'd always bring us over there, and we would do a lot at Webster University.
Yeah.
But then when I graduated Webster University, it was like they weren't even recruiting from Webster High School at the time. It's almost like you had to live somewhere else.
I feel so lucky because honestly, I didn't know what I was doing, and I did have to audition. And they only took our class was teeny tiny. I'm not really sure why they took me, but I did well there, and I found my place at Webster.
That's something you all have to do.
Yeah.
Not you all have to do, but people have to do is find out what is their niche.
Yeah.
And
That's
where is
right.
that,
Yeah.
and then run
And
with
I
it.
knew that was really the only thing that I wanted to do. I didn't have any other choice.
Wow.
And I think people who survive in the business really I just spoke to a class at the conservatory yesterday of seniors, and I told them, I said, you know, to last, you have to want it more than anything and make huge sacrifices. I was lucky because once I started casting, I got to make a living. And I did. I'm very lucky that I was in Chicago and the industry was thriving, and there weren't a whole lot of us then. There weren't many casting directors there then. So I just had a plethora of work and learned on, as I went. But that was really, I believe casting is what I was really supposed to do.
So what does a casting director actually do?
Well, and I feel like when I started, we had more control than we do now. We would get to call, like from the different agents and from productions we had seen and all the actors we knew, who we put in front of the director. So it was our eye and our judgment as to who got to come in to audition. It's very rare a casting director gets to pick the cast, but we would present. And in those days, we were trusted so highly that we didn't have to bring hundreds of people in for a role. We could cull it down to like eight actors per category. Now it's different. I mean, I told the kids yesterday, you could go for a commercial and be up against 100 people 100 actors per category or more.
And now, was it dealing with agents back then or directly
Yeah.
with the actors? Or
No, agents. And then I would go see theater almost every night of the week to scout. Mm-hmm.
Wow, so
Yeah.
you really got a chance to see a lot of people, see a lot of plays.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, and work with some pretty top-notch directors. And then when I moved back to St. Louis to raise my daughter, when she had to go to school, and I was a single mother by then, and our school district in downtown Chicago wasn't fantastic. So I came home, and it was rough at first because they didn't really use casting directors in St. Louis much then. But after a year of only casting herbicide commercials for Monsanto,
Big business.
the film commission here was blooming and prospering, and that's when the really big movies rolled into St. Louis. Yeah, and TV shows.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're always saying that St. Louis really is a great place to be. And, and when you're from St. Louis, all you hear people do is just bash, bash, bash. But it's got wonderful, first of all, we always talk about the wonderful theater and the wonderful free opportunities there are, the great parks. And,
Yeah.
we've got the green spaces.
Well, Forest Park is sort of my front yard. I live in that neighborhood in Des Moines, and it's
Okay.
pretty
Oh, yeah.
amazing to just cross the street, and that's where I am.
Absolutely. So now we kind of fast forward, and I remember talking to you several years ago. We met at Miley Restaurant.
Yeah.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Tuesday nights.
We all sit at the bar.
Yeah.
And we would talk. And so that's how I got to meet Carrie. And you were kind of in the maybe not infant stage of the Tennessee
but
Williams Festival.
Exactly, I was probably when we met.
Okay.
So we're in our fourth year. That was we formed the board in 2015 after Stairs to the Roof was so successful, and I realized I was a pretty good producer. But everybody needs to know how really hard that job is. It's really like being a ringmaster of many different personalities and
Now, divide this for me. What a producer does differently than a director.
Well, the producer, raises the money and puts the team together. And as a casting director, I also put that hat on. But I hire the directors, the designers. And, when I hire designers, it's with input from the directors, of course, because I want everyone to be happy artistically. Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, that's very, very important. But then I also have to understand that we have to make money and not go broke, get people in the seats. So it's a lot.
Right. There's a tremendous responsibility.
There's tremendous
responsibility.
A lot of weight. It's a lot of weight. But as we grow, I mean, I'm hoping that we can staff up to take some of this off of my hands. Mm-hmm. And right now we're getting there. We're slowly getting there.
So this is the fourth year? Fourth year.
Fourth.
And tell us a little bit about the transition from just kind of birthing that to where it is now to, it's really becoming very well known internationally.
Yeah. Thank you. We're proud of that because it's happened quickly.
Yes, it has.
I formed the board 5 years ago. We launched in 2016. Well, no, I formed the board in 2015, launched in 2016. And our first festival looked huge, considering it was our first festival. It had maybe more elements than we've ever had, but I didn't produce all of them. I produced some 1X in a house in Grand Center, which is still my favorite production to this day. But then we presented a couple of different theater companies here did Tennessee Williams, and I put them under our banner and promoted them and gave them venues and whatnot and put them in our schedule. And we do a tribute every year to Tennessee on the closing night of the first weekend, which we produce, and we use people from our company doing excerpts from plays, songs, whatnot. It's a beautiful, magical evening. But the first year was it was a lot. We had many panels. We had a one-man show. We brought in a lot of scholars from all over the country, the top scholars, and we did really well. And I thought, boy, I was really looking at it like maybe I'll just do this once. Mm-hmm. So then we went back. And again, second year had a lot of moving parts. We brought in a troupe of Cubans from Miami to do their version of Streetcar. We brought in Tennessee's paintings from Key West, which had only been seen outside of Key West once. And we kept them here for about 3 months. We had multiple productions. Lots of visitors. I had a scholar come in from France who knows a lot about the paintings and is writing a book about them. So then last year, I thought, we were able to get the Grandel Theater last year, which had newly been recently refurbished. And I thought, okay, 300 seats, 300 plus seats if we open the balcony. I have to do an iconic Williams play for this venue. So we did Streetcar. And I brought in a director who I adore, and we're on the same artistic page most of the time. And we cast it impeccably and didn't do a whole lot else last year. I threw a lot of eggs in the Streetcar basket. I did bring in a one-man show, and we always have our panels. But that was the festival last year. And we were nominated for 11 St. Louis Theater Circle Awards for that show. In every category we could be nominated in,
and
we were.
And go ahead and say what those categories are, because this is a really big deal.
It's a big deal. And it was, I mean, for such a new company, the nominations were Best Production, Best Director, Best Actress, Actor, Supporting in both categories. Lighting design, set design,
everything.
Sound design, costume design, everything we could have been a best ensemble, we got the nominations. We ended up taking home 7 of them, including best production, best director, best ensemble, best actress.
That's huge.
And most of the design awards.
And those were awarded, about a month ago?
About a month ago.
Wow,
yeah.
that is major.
I still really can't believe it. And then the Arts and Education Council awarded us as Best Arts Startup of 2019, which again is a big deal.
That is fabulous.
I mean, standing in the Khorasan room on that stage in front of 1,000 people getting that award was pretty.
Oh yeah, the Khorasan room is just unbelievable. Yeah,
and I think what you've done in starting the festival is really lay some groundwork for people who want to do this in other communities.
Yeah.
And maybe not with Tennessee Williams, obviously,
Well,
but with
right.
somebody else.
But there are festivals for Tennessee, and New Orleans being the oldest, which is 30 plus years old. Provincetown is going on their 15th year, I think, in Massachusetts. And I've been going to these. So, you know, of course, I was inspired. And I think now in our 4th year, we're finding our own identity. And I believe that of the 3 major festivals, but there's also one in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and Columbus, Mississippi, where he had ties, and a lot of events in Key West where he spent a lot of his life. I think we all look different, and there's a place for all of us. But I'm really proud that we found our little groove now, and we do a lot of theater, but we still like the panels. New Orleans is more panels. It's more panels than theater. And then Provincetown, being Provincetown, has a beautiful own thing going because they have the ability, especially with, you know, being 15 years old, but also with where they are and who their community is and their visitors are. They can do the edgier Tennessee Williams work, which I like to throw in every now and then. But for St. Louis, I'm trying to stick with some traditional every year as well.
Well, you know, what's interesting about all those places, he has a connection there. He's lived there or he vacationed there. His connection here, he grew up here after he moved from Mississippi.
Yeah.
And went to school at Soldan and University City.
Yeah.
Wow.
And went to Wash U.
Yeah.
And University of Missouri.
Yeah.
Columbia. Graduated from
University of Iowa.
Right. So he lived in the West End. And a lot of his life is his plays, and a lot of his plays, it's his life.
Even if they're not about St. Louis, but quite honestly, there are a number of them about St. Louis. Some that are just now being published. He wrote many plays that we don't even know about
Kind of
yet.
like the one you guys are going to be presenting on Creve Coeur.
Yeah, but that was actually published quite a while ago.
Really?
It's just
Okay.
rarely produced. And that does take place on Enright Avenue, where my dad was born and grew up, and has so many St. Louis references that it's just, you get a kick out of that alone. You know, she works at the International Shoe Company. They go to Creve Coeur Park for their picnic, and they teach at Blewett, where my dad went. So there are a lot of wonderful. They talk about the brewery, but not Anheuser-Busch. Was it maybe Falstaff?
Falstaff,
yeah.
right.
I think they talk about Falstaff and the butcher, Mr. Butts on Grand. And, you know, our lead actor in Night of the Iguana is Jim Butts, and he has a huge family. And I keep meaning to ask him, did you have an uncle ever, a cousin who was a butcher?
No kidding. No kidding. No, that's great. So what we want to do, folks, is take the festival not apart, but we want to talk about each of the plays a little bit, what people are going to see, where it's going to be, obviously at the Grandel, what you can expect to see when you go there, and some of the other interesting things that you have going on, like the tour.
Yeah.
That's very interesting because I didn't know he was buried here in St. Louis.
We have
I didn't
too
know that.
many sites to see. We could do 10 tours and not cover it all. But I love the tour. And just going to the gravesite is pretty amazing. He did not want to be buried here.
Right. Wanted
He
to be
is
buried
buried
at
here
sea.
with his mother Edwina and his sister Rose and his brother Dakin. On the bus tour, that's the culmination of the day. I mean, that's what everyone wants to see, and it's sort of heart-wrenching, actually.
Well, it's interesting, you know, walking on the Star down in the Loop,
Yeah.
and seeing that, and then there's the bus down in the West End, and knowing that there's all of these iconic artists who have resided here, or they either were raised here, born here, or spent some time here, and how much of this that we just kind of keep going with our lives and don't really
Right.
embrace and take advantage
I know,
of.
and I'm hoping St. Louis will finally embrace Tennessee. And a note about the sculpture on Euclid and McPherson. Very known sculptor Harry Weber did that bust of Tennessee Williams, and he's in The Night of the Iguana playing Nano. He's a brilliant actor, by the way.
Wow.
So I love that connection. And we didn't cast him for that, of course. He's a brilliant actor. But I love that. But, you know, having recently been in New Orleans for their festival, walking around the French Quarter and other neighborhoods, they really honor him there. I mean, a restaurant will say Tennessee Williams used to eat here. And I mean, he's everywhere, especially in the French Quarter. And it's time that we recognized his contribution to our city more. And the festival's doing that.
Time to recognize a lot of St. Louisans who have gone before us and understand and value their contributions to what they've done for what we have right now.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm just amazed at history, and that's what we're going to talk about. Talk about a little bit more about his life when we come back. Dissect the festival. This is Arnold Stricker with Ellie Wharton of In Tune. You're listening to KWRHLP 92.9 FM, your community radio station in Webster Groves, Missouri. This is Arnold Stricker with Ellie Wharton. We've been talking to Carrie Houck from the Tennessee Williams St. Louis
I think
Tennessee Williams Festival St. Louis.
Yes, she requires superlatives.
Oh.
You know, now you just can't say, you know, we're here with Carrie Houck.
We are here with the outstanding casting director, actor, and producer and teaching artist, Carrie Houck.
There you go. The tremendous, the stupendous, the most awesomest.
Thank you.
And we're talking Tennessee Williams, a St. Louis person.
Almost
2 decades
a native.
here.
Almost a native.
Right. Streetcar Named Desire. Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. Meow. Glass Menagerie.
Everybody's heard of these.
Right. How about this one? Have you heard of this one?
Yeah.
A Lovely Sunday for Creve Coeur.
No.
The Night of the Iguana.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the Night of the Iguana.
Well,
because this festival's coming up, folks.
The Night of the Iguana is probably the reason why I'm doing the festival. It's my favorite play. It has been my whole life. And when I met Tim Osell, our director, we discovered that it's his favorite play as well. So we decided not to do it last year because we wanted to do one of the really iconic plays, and we had presented Glass Menagerie our first year. So to me, that is Streetcar Named Desire. Mm-hmm. It's the one everybody knows. So we got that very successfully under our belts. And we knew that this was our year for the Night of the Iguana. I've wanted to produce this for 20 years.
Wow.
I talked about it in an interview in St. Louis Magazine, honestly, 25 years ago. And I wasn't a producer yet. And then it just didn't happen. I did a reading of it, and I actually did 2 readings of it, and it never happened. And finally, my dream comes true.
The timing has to be right.
Yeah, and we have the venue for it because it's 14 characters. I mean, they don't write plays like this anymore. Not straight plays, not non-musicals. Because frankly, they're very expensive to produce when you have that many actors. So we're going big, and it's beautiful, it's poetic, it's about humanity, it's about kindness. And I believe that what better year in our country right now to talk about being kind, right? It's about the world on a precipice. It takes place on the brink of World War II. And it's about a lot of disjointed people at a crossroads, let me say, in their lives and coming together at this rundown resort in Mexico and understanding what they need at this point.
Mm-hmm. That's a very loving description. You know, it really brings you in and it shows you the humanity involved in the play. And I think you've done an excellent job of describing that.
Thank you, because honestly, I feel like, God, I'm going to sound so old, but in this era that we're in right now, people aren't always nice to each other right now.
Kindness.
They have the
is
ability
something.
to bash each other on social media and just expletives fly like crazy. And I just think we're in an unkind time in our history. And I think that it's important that we remember what it takes to live a happy, healthy life.
You know, we've had this conversation several times on the air with different artists and musicians. Mm-hmm. And the question was, does art imitate life or does life imitate art? Mm-hmm. And I'm always interested in people's responses to that. And they both many times intertwine, or one is a reflection of the other.
Right.
And to see something that's going to reflect kindness speaks of many times individuals who are living in history rather than the events of history.
Right.
And who are we reflecting? Are we reflecting the events or individuals. And what are we doing individually to portray that back? Are we, it's kind of like hairspray. I've talked about this with Ellie. Sometimes when people get angry, it's like hairspray. And do we get our own can out and spray it back, which is what happens a lot on social media nowadays, because you can kind of do that anonymously.
Right, and without bravery.
Correct.
Right, without bravery.
It's like,
You're right.
I say, like throwing a hand grenade. You're not close to the damage, but let's do hand-to-hand combat if we want to talk about something.
Right.
So that's important.
It's a beautiful play, and the characters are so just wonderfully interesting. And I'm writing my notes for the program right now, and I mentioned that for better or worse, I'm highly attracted to all of these characters as people. I mean, they're all people I would want to know and have in my life, and I think it's really worth seeing. And it's got humor in it, it's got love in it, it's got thoughtfulness, it has controversy. It's just a marvelous work of art, and I don't think it's produced enough. Again, because it's expensive to put on.
Right, you said 14 actors.
And I love Mexico. I've always wanted to be living in Mexico, and I get to for a few weeks in the spring of 2019 in St. Louis, Missouri. I always wanted to be Maxine, who's one of the lead characters in the play. She runs the resort, and she's not without flaws, let me say, but she knows how to embrace life, and I like that about her. And I think the others do as well, but their styles are a lot different.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right that it does embody everything that's going on at our time right now. When you think about there is controversy, and the controversy has to do with Mexico. Anything,
but also, the
things.
play is really about, and my director likes to reiterate this, it's about reaching through broken fences. It's about reaching out to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice.
And we need to be doing
broken
that
fences,
much more
especially
than
when
we
we're
are.
talking about
So
that.
that's going to be presented when? Because I know you have a window between May 9th and 19th.
So the festival kicks off May 9th with the Night of the Iguana, and it runs the whole way through May 19th.
Okay.
We do have a few days off in between the long weekends, but that's our big production. On May 11th, we open with a lovely Sunday for Creve Coeur upstairs at the Grandel in the Grand Hall.
Okay.
And that will run both weekends, but only on the weekends, and mostly matinees. We have a 1 and a 5 o'clock on Saturday, Sunday, and then the following Saturday and Sunday.
That's probably a more intimate play.
Yeah, it's for women on Enright Avenue. They are together for one afternoon, planning to go to, a few of them are planning to go to Creve Coeur Park for the picnic at the end of the day on the streetcar, which my mom used to take actually out there.
That must have taken forever to get from
It
Enright to the
takes a minute to
Creve Coeur
drive
Park.
out there. I can't imagine.
I can't even imagine that. I mean, because I think about it, it takes 20 minutes to get in the car, driving 60 miles an hour to get from here to there.
It's really, it's in Maryland Heights. It's not in literally
You're
in
right.
Creve Coeur.
Right, exactly.
Creve Coeur is beautiful. They're very eccentric women. It was the Golden Girls based the show on this play. I don't know how many people are aware of that.
There you go, folks.
Yeah. And the women in the play are younger than the women were in the Golden Girls, but
My mom watches that every night.
they're four disparate characters who, again, it's about humanity and needing each other and reaching out to each other, even though at the beginning of the play you wonder how this could possibly work. But it's very human. It's very funny. I would consider it a comedy. And I hope that more people are introduced to this play and get to see a really top-notch production of it. We have hired 4 excellent female actors to portray these roles. Carrie Ely, who's a known actor in our town, is directing it. She's also an amazing director. So I think that they'll be in for a treat.
Then you have another one, Dear Mr. Williams.
Yeah. Brian Batt, who I've met in New Orleans and was one of my favorite characters on Mad Men. He played Sal on Mad Men, for those of you who watch that show. He is a wonderful stage actor as well. He was very influenced by Williams, both personally and professionally, since he was in high school. And the one-man show, Dear Mr. Williams, is based on his experience with this writer in his own life. So we're world premiering it. It's pretty
Wow.
exciting, and we're co-producing it. So we hope that it will go on and have legs after it leaves St. Louis.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's,
Michael Wilson is directing it, and he is an iconic Tennessee Williams director. And I still have to pinch myself to realize that he's coming in to direct a show that we're co-producing. Yeah. So we've grown. Although we started out big, I have to say, the first play I did, Stairs to the Roof, I brought in a director from Cape Town because I had to replace someone here, and it was just so far-fetched, and it
they
was
said yes
gorgeous.
and came over, and it worked.
He came like 3 days later to cast. I got a really surprisingly cheap ticket from Cape Town to St. Louis. It took him hours. It took him days to get here.
I was going to say there was no direct flight, I'm sure.
No, it took him, the flight was 36 hours.
Oh my gosh.
But he made it, and we made, beautiful art, and the rest is history.
you go.
Right. He probably had to land in every continent to
He
get here.
did. He really did.
So the panel discussions, what does that consist of?
Well, we have now. I just added one that's not even published yet. Most of them are on our first Saturday morning. We do these every year because I have been going to these festivals for so many years. I've met a lot of the top scholars along the way on this circuit. And Tom Mitchell, who teaches at the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana. I've known about Tom for years and years and years. Whenever people knew I liked Tennessee Williams, you have to reach out to Thomas Mitchell. So he's curating them and moderating them. We have David Kaplan coming in from the Provincetown Festival. Michael Wilson, who I just spoke about, will be on them. Henry Chevet, who is a scholar from WashU, knows a lot about Williams, and many others. Some of our cast members are participating. We have different topics. We're talking about Tennessee Williams and the political life in St. Louis at the time he was writing. We're talking about the playwright as a cultural tourist. And, that will focus on the Night of the Iguana. But again, there's a lot to mine considering the brilliant panelists we have. We actually have replaced one of these. We've changed it up a little bit. Why Tennessee, Why Now is the current third Saturday morning offering. Here we are, it's 2019. Many of these plays were written decades ago. How do they apply to our lives right now?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it important that we still produce this writer? Some people would say only new works should be produced right now. I highly disagree. I think we need both. And I think a lot of these plays need to be reexamined. And there's so much, as I said, in The Night of the Iguana that is so timely to where we are now in history. And there's a lot of depth that maybe some people don't see.
Another comment that we've made frequently on the show, we must learn about history, know about history, so we don't repeat history.
Exactly.
And the arts are a great place to learn about that and what was going on.
And then we just added one that is going to be, I believe, on the first Sunday morning, which is Mother's Day, which is a little tricky, but that's when all my scholars are still here. And we're actually putting a number of local people on the panel. And we're going to examine producing Tennessee Williams and still casting diversely and producing these in a different way than they were originally, which we have to a certain extent up to this point. And we're going to re-examine that with some people from the community and with the scholars and make it a continuing discussion.
That's interesting, yes.
Yeah.
To make it the ongoing discussion so that people do see how it ties. And I was just noticing from the notes here with Dear Mr. Williams and talking about all of the different things that go on, sex and alcohol. And, but the thing of it is, as you said, the funny coming of age story of a young gay artist.
Right.
And so we've always thought of artists and we've accepted, the gay lifestyle within the artist. But I mean, imagine here, 2019, we actually have an openly gay presidential candidate, and you just think about 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that would have been the death knell of that person. And I think that's wonderful that we're able to tie all this in.
Brian is well, I'm not going to divulge his age, but when he grew up,
Right.
he didn't know if it was okay to talk about it or admit it. Or he grew up in a very Catholic background in New Orleans, and sort of a high social strata, and
Right.
he felt that Tennessee Williams sort of allowed him to accept who he is. Plus, he's very entertaining. I mean, Brian is a true showman, and the show is going to be highly entertaining and funny and poignant all at the same time. But just as a casting director, I mean, I've always cast diversely my whole career, even before it was a big topic of conversation. We brought in the National Theater of Ghana. I don't know how many
Wow.
people know that. That was...
No.
I think it was 2 years ago. 16 actors from Ghana came in. I applied for a special grant to allow this to happen. It was so thrilling. But here, 16 Africans were doing a Tennessee Williams play that was not written for probably anyone but white actors. And it was one of the most beautiful things. It's one of the things I'm the most proud of. And we tried to get them back. We didn't get the grant this year. I wanted them to do Suddenly Last Summer for us in the Jewel Box. But one day we'll get different money to be able to do that. It was thrilling. We played them in the streets all over the city of St. Louis, and we didn't charge any admission. I wanted people who normally don't get to see theater to see some very thrilling theater. So it's a topic that we cannot stop talking about. We must not, and how to do this successfully. And as we look ahead,
You have a jazz brunch along with the bus tour, and these all take place down at the Grand Ole.
mostly we'll be in the Grand Ole the main stage venue. We'll be upstairs in the Grand Hall, which hasn't been used as a theater space in a few years, so I'm sort of happy to resurrect that. We'll have the panels in the dark room, the jazz brunches in the dark room, and then Brian Batt will be at the Curtain Call Lounge, which, for those of you who haven't been, is a beautiful venue. It's intimate. It's next door to the Fox, and it's really like a little nightclub. It's
great.
Yeah, and you can eat and drink and all the fun
And be merry.
stuff, and be merry.
So how can people get tickets, Carrie?
They go to metrotix.com, or they can drive up to the Fox box office and park in that little 15-minute spot and buy tickets at the box office there. They are open during the day, 9 to 5, and then later on show days. Yeah. Go to our website.
Website is, go ahead.
www.twstl.org. We have a deal at the Chase Sonesta Hotel. It's now the Chase Sonesta for our out-of-town visitors, and that information is on our website. They gave us a very lovely deal on a beautiful, beautiful, iconic hotel in the Central West End.
But that could actually be a great Mother's Day package.
Yeah.
If you think you go and you stay at the Chase, and then you do the this and you do the that. And, and even if you do live in town, it's a staycation.
Well, we actually do very well on Mother's Day. People make a day of it because they can come. Now they could come to a panel. They can come to brunch. They can come to a 1:00 matinee of A Lovely Sunday for Creve Coeur and still make it to the 3:00 matinee of Night of the Iguana.
Wow.
Have some dinner and then stay for the tribute reading, which is on Sunday night, May 12th, where actors from the company and musicians read from Williams. It's Tom Mitchell put this together too. It's a beautiful evening of poetry, letters that he wrote, scenes from plays, music. Ken Page is hosting that. Our lovely Ken Page. We're so lucky to have him here in St. Louis. So it's a festival.
That's great. We're talking about the Tennessee Williams Festival St. Louis, which is in its 4th year of production. This is the 2019 season, and you can get more information by going to twstl.org, www.twstl.org. And this festival takes place from May the 9th through the 19th, and it's just that time at the Grand
here
Ole.
we are.
And then Carrie's busy working for the next season.
I
Getting
tell
things
you.
Wait till you
together.
hear what that is. I cannot say yet, but it's something wonderful and wild.
Something wild and wonderful and special.
I think she's just booked herself on the next show, next
Absolutely.
year, or whenever the next
Absolutely.
thing starts.
We're also hoping to do possibly a production in the fall, just so people don't forget about us during the course of the year. So,
Well,
That's a
I'll
good idea.
recommend, and I have a way of having a little bit of pull around here, but I'm going to recommend to Arnold, hint, hint, that he makes sure he books you for the fall.
okay. I'd love it.
There we go. We will do that. This is Arnold Stricker with Ellie Wharton. You're listening to In Tune on KWRHLP 92.9 FM, your community radio station in Webster Groves, Missouri.